My name is Ed Frawley. My wife and I own Leerburg. This video is more of an introduction. We have produced videos since 1982. We have a number of streaming videos that became outdated and we stopped selling them years ago. What I've decided to do is put a number of these videos up on YouTube, more of a historical interest in people, because a lot of the old videos, people will still find it interesting. And they may even see a training technique that they might want to try with their own dog. But this one it's handler training for Schutzhund I. Schutzhund's a dog sport that originated in Germany. Today they call it IGP. I won't go into all the information on what Schutzhund is. That would be a good YouTube video for me to explain how Schutzhund was when I started it and put titles on the dogs, 4 or 5 different dogs back in the early 1980s, 83 and 84, and how it's evolved today. Huge different. I bred police service dogs for 35 years. I haven't bred a dog since 2009. But when I was breeding police service, and I bred a lot of them, when I was breeding dogs, I used dogs from the bloodlines from Germany. And that's still the case today, although there's a difference in bloodlines then and there are now. So you might see some differences here. So if you're involved in the sport of Schutzhund, you might find this interesting. If you're involved in breeding German Shepherds, you might find this interesting.
While the people that are watching this video have purchased it because it's a handler training tape for Schutzhund I, I will now include a Schutzhund II routine, and a very good Schutzhund routine, from my friend Carmen Bird. The obedience portion of this competition scored 96 points, and the protection portion scored 100 points. The purpose for me including this is not so much for training, but just to give those that have not seen a Schutzhund II routine an opportunity to see one. Each jumper article.
Excellent. Wegtransport. Excellent. Attack. It's okay. A long attack. Okay. 100 points.
If you have an interest in Schutzhund, in other Schutzhund videos, or in articles on Schutzhund, in questions and answers on Schutzhund, I would direct you to my website. My website is 2,500 pages long. It's the largest dog training website on the internet. Thank you for your business. The purpose of this video is to teach trainers how to handle a dog for a Schutzhund I competition. Many times, handler errors and not dog errors result in points being lost at a trial. Hopefully our viewers will gain valuable tips from this video that will decrease these handler errors. This has been an extremely difficult video to produce because the rules of Schutzhund are not always specifically defined in the rule books. The Schutzhund USA and DVG rule books are worded almost identically, but judges from both organizations sometimes interpret the wording differently. In fact, if you're in the sport long enough, you'll find that judges from the same organization may disagree on the interpretation of a rule. This doesn't always mean that one judge is wrong and the other is right. It just means they have different ideas of what the wording of a rule means. We made an effort in the production of this video to show the most common or safest interpretation of a rule. If a question arose during production, we polled several judges for their opinions and then used the most common interpretation. But because of the differences in opinion, we recommend a handler always ask his or her judge to clarify any question they have concerning rule interpretation. Judges are always happy to answer questions. The rules governing the sport of Schutzhund are periodically changed. We felt the viewer should have an idea who makes up the rules that we're obliged to follow. I'll take a minute here and explain a flowchart that will help you understand this process. The World Organization of Dog Clubs is called the FCI. The members of the FCI are the presidents of the main dog organizations of each country, like the AKC, except for the fact that the AKC is not a member, but that's a different story. Members of the FCI accept one another's registration papers and pedigrees. They also agreed to accept the rules governing the FCI. Now, the reason that the AKC gives for not being a member of the FCI is that they claim they are not an international organization and therefore have no reason to become a member. In Germany, the VDH, or the West German National Kennel Club, is the German member of the FCI. The SV is the German Shepherd Dog Club of West Germany and is a member of the VDH. Just as the ADRK, or Rottweiler Club of West Germany, is also a member of the VDH, along with the Doberman Club and the Bouvier Club, and the other working breed clubs are also members of the VDH. The DHV is the German Dog Sport Alliance, or the All-Breed Dog Organization. It also is a member of the VDH. The DVG that we see here in America, or the German Alliance of Utility Dog Sports, is a member of the DHV. There is a committee in the VDH called the AZG Rules Committee, which sets the rules for Schutzhund. The members of the AZG committee are the presidents of the various organizations. For example, the president of the SV would be a member of the AZG committee. The FCI accepts the AZG rules as the international rules for the sport of Schutzhund. Now, if this all sounds complicated, it is, but it explains to the viewer where these Schutzhund rules come from. So, with this in mind, you must always remember that the rules that we discuss in this video are not laid in concrete. They may change over the years as the AZG committee defines or changes our rules. So again, we advise every viewer to study up-to-date rule books and make an effort to keep abreast of current rule interpretations. At the end of this video, we will give you the addresses of where to purchase rule books. Successful competitors begin to prepare for a competition weeks in advance of a trial. Very little is left to chance or luck. This preparation takes place in a number of ways. If traveling to another club to compete, they get their dogs used to working on new fields with different helpers. If they can't go to that specific club, they train at as many new locations as possible. Too often, new people underestimate how important this is to a young dog. Experienced competitors assume their dogs have reached the maximum level of training at least 2 weeks in advance of a trial. They sit down and work out a realistic expectation on the maximum number of points his or her dog is going to receive in each category according to the dog's current level of training. If they're not happy with this score, they'll wait for a future trial. In other words, it's not realistic to expect a dog to luck into a 100-point track when his level of training would only indicate an 85-point track. Estimating your score in advance is important to new competitors. Too often, people form unrealistic expectations in their mind about what their score could be. They set themselves up for a disappointment on the day of the trial, and when the dog doesn't get 100 points, they get so upset that they can't think clearly during the rest of the work. Now, we all hope that luck will be on our side during a competition, but the handler that's hoping for a miracle is only kidding himself. He's adding unnecessary stress to an already stressful situation. So, the safest bet is to accept your 2-week training level and not try and fix dog problems right up to the point of walking onto the field. This only leads to disaster. Therefore, the last couple of weeks before a trial, you should spend your time on maintenance training with your dog. Although we cannot train a dog up to the last minute, we can work with handlers during these last few weeks to give a better performance. We would advise all handlers, beginners and advanced, to take the time to walk obedience routines without a dog until they are positive they know exactly where they're supposed to be and where they're going next throughout the trial. By becoming familiar with what you're supposed to do, you will find that you are more relaxed and have more time to concentrate on your dog during the actual competition. New handlers may also want to practice having someone whistle them around a track. You'd be surprised at how many people get flustered and forget where their track is because they're not used to laying a track under the direction of another person. With Schutzhund I Tracking, the handler should have the advantage because he knows exactly where the turns are. If he gets flustered and forgets where he laid the corners, he loses this advantage. As the trial day approaches, begin to gather the items you will want to take with you when you travel. These should include photocopies of the dog's registration papers and pedigree, an up-to-date health certificate and shot record, your scorebook, making sure that it's registered with the organization that you're going to compete with. You'll want to take a first aid kit that should definitely include diarrhea medicine and a thermometer. Take rain gear and an umbrella, and no matter where you travel, take warm clothes. If traveling to a different club, many competitors will take their own water from home for the dog to drink. An alternative to this is to use bottled water that you buy when you get there. If the dog is to be crated before the trial, make sure that it is accustomed to the crate. If the dog is a kennel dog, get him used to sleeping in a crate in the house. Even though points are not added or deducted for how you dress or conduct yourself at a trial, every competitor should give some thought to creating the best image possible of himself and his dog. Keep in mind that your Schutzhund judge has traveled hundreds, if not thousands of miles to judge your event. Why not show him or her the respect they deserve by presenting yourself and your dog in the best possible manner? On the day of the trial, your first stop is going to be with the trial secretary. You will register for the competition and turn over your scorebook. In Germany, you would also include a copy of the dog's registration papers. Schutzhund USA and the DVG here in America does not require registration papers on your dog. The Schutzhund USA clubs do require scorebooks be stamped by the home office in St. Louis. The DVG scorebooks have to be registered in Germany with the head office of the DVG. If you have questions about how to do this, don't wait until the day of the trial to get your answers. This may be too late. Many competitors like to run a short practice track before their competition. Usually this only consists of a 50 to 60 foot track with one article. A dog that has a weak start may need a food drop out at the 20-foot mark. If you wish to run this track in a field near the tracking grounds, proper etiquette would be to ask permission from the trial secretary. Once you've registered for the competition, you're expected to report for every phase of the competition. That includes the closing ceremonies. If a competitor fails his track, he is still required to show up and compete for obedience and protection. The only way to be excused is if the judge gives permission. Competitors that take it upon themselves to drop out of a trial could be barred from future Schutzhund competitions. When the time comes to lay your track, you should report to the judge by introducing yourself and showing him your articles. The articles should be the size of a wallet, close in color to the landscape. A wallet or eyeglass case is perfect. When you lay your track, your dog must be out of sight. The judge will inform you which of the patterns you will take. There are only 3 possible patterns for Schutzhund I. He will tell you to make your turns when he blows the whistle, or he will ask you to count your paces and turn at the required number of steps. This could vary between 120 and 150 paces depending upon the judge and the field conditions. The handler is expected to place a starting marker in the ground to the left of the scent pad, as we see here. The handler will be expected to take a while to stomp in his scent pad. Normally this should not be longer than a minute, and although the rules don't state the exact size of a pad at the start of your track, most judges will not criticize a pad that's 1 meter square. Now, as you leave your scent pad, it specifically says that you should not scuff or shuffle your feet as you lay your track. Most experienced competitors describe their track laying as stomping in the track, and it looks like this. The handler will be required to lay a article halfway down the first leg or halfway down the second leg at the discretion of the judge. He will tell you when and where he wants his article laid. The handler is not to slow down or stop at any point on the track, and this includes the corners or where you lay your articles. Some judges could fault you for stopping at an article as you lay your track, or for laying the article off to the side of the track. The article is to be placed directly on the track. There are several points that new handlers should keep in mind as they lay their track. First, as you walk, think about how the wind currents could affect the dog's performance, especially at the corners. If you know the wind is at your back, there is a good possibility that your dog is going to overshoot the corner. If you have already anticipated this, you're not going to stress out when it happens. Just stop and back up a little. Notice how Ann laid the article. She showed the judge that it was going down and then did not stop when she placed it on the ground. Most judges don't expect you to turn on a dime when they blow the whistle. If you happen to be at a bald spot in the grass when the whistle is blown, they're not going to fault you for taking several more steps and turning at a better location. After Ann is through laying this track, we'll demonstrate some of the most common mistakes that handlers make when they lay their tracks. The rules state that after you have placed your last article, you should proceed on several more paces. We will watch Ann do this correctly in a minute. It's done by taking several very long steps straight ahead at the last article. You don't want to forget this because if done properly, it's a help to your dog. It's a very distinct end of the track, and the dog will know that there's an article close by if he's not already found it. Now here we're going to watch Ann do the last article. Now, let's take a look at a few of the most common mistakes that handlers make when they lay their tracks. First, let's watch a mistake that you'll sometimes see at the scent pad. The handler proceeds several paces forward from the start and then backtracks to the flag, similar to double laying the track or this portion of the track. This is not acceptable. New handlers have a tendency to stop at the corners and sight down the next leg to get their bearing, as we see Ann demonstrating here. You may find a judge that says that this is unacceptable. Another mistake that new handlers make is to round their corners too much. The handler could place himself in a situation where the judge doesn't notice this taking place as the track is being laid because he's watching from back at the scent pad. But then, during the actual trial, while he follows closely behind the dog, he sees the dog round the corner and deducts points for cutting the corner, when in fact, the dog just followed your exact footsteps. So you must be careful here. The following corner is rounded too much. The following two corners are a sharp L and a short radius rounded corner that would be acceptable Schutzhund I corners by all judges. Next, we would like to show you how some handlers put articles down the wrong way. The rules state that you should not stop at corners or articles, and yet some handlers actually come to a stop when they lay their article down, and it looks like this. We also see handlers who scuff or shuffle their feet too much during the track laying. There are a lot of variations how to do this. The following is just one example. Others do a little twist as they lay their track. It's all basically faulty track laying. Once your track has been laid, it's time to prepare your dog. This 20 to 30 minute wait is always harder on the handlers than on the dogs. New handlers sometimes get nervous and try and do too much with their dogs during this time period. What you should do is get your dog out and make sure he's watered and walked. If your dog relieves himself on the track, it's a point deduction. So once you are confident that he's done his business, let him lie quietly in the type of grass he will track in. Keep him away from other dogs or spectators or other competitors. Dogs pick up on your nervousness easily, and your conversations with other people may give away your nervousness. What you shouldn't do is leave your dog in the car up until the point where you have to report to the judge for your track, or get him out of the car and play ball with him so that when you approach your track flag, he is panting. The next step in our video concerns reporting to the judge when it's your turn to track. A point to keep in mind is that you and your dog should be prepared with time to spare. Don't assume that the person ahead of you is going to run a successful track. If this person's dog doesn't leave the scent pad, you're going to be called upon to track sooner than you thought. When it is your turn, you'll be expected to report with your dog on leash and the leash attached to the dead ring on the collar. Prong, leather, and nylon collars are not allowed. The rules state that a person can track a dog without a line, but even if that is your choice and we don't recommend it, you still must have the dog wear a choke collar. Tracking with a harness is allowed. How you attach the line to the harness varies from USA to DVG. Most experienced handlers report with their dog attached to the tracking line. The line will be stretched out behind and dragging on the ground so that they know that it will not tangle. When you report to the judge, the dog should be in the basic heel position by your side, sitting. Introduce yourself, your dog, and tell the judge that your dog will either pick up or point out the articles. We always recommend pointing out articles. What you don't say is the dog will lie down by the article or sit by the article. Pointing out is acceptable language and means that the dog can either sit, stand, or lay down. If you tell the judge that your dog is going to lie by the article and he sits, you will lose points for a faulty indication. Once you've reported to the judge, the dog must pass a test of impartiality or a temperament test. The type of test is left to the discretion of the judge. Some judges walk up and shake your hand and pet your dog. Others will ask that you walk your dog through a group of people. If your dog is a police service dog, you should inform the judge so that he can take this training into consideration. The dog must show complete confidence at all times. Unacceptable behavior would consist of a dog shying away or being overly aggressive. The judge will excuse a dog from the trial if he's not satisfied with his temperament. Good temperament is something that is a must for the future of the sport of Schutzhund. The following is an example of the type of reaction a dog would display to be excused from a trial. I would also like to say that what you're about to see was set up and staged specifically for this video.
Tom Morelli, a draft is reporting for Schutzhund I Tracking. Now this is the guy I call it. If he's really behaving defensively, this is not the right dog for this trial. I don't think you should bring a dog in very defensive like this. This dog is not good for Schutzhund. I want to excuse you because I don't think this is right. Please leave the field.
Although our demonstration can be faulted, the point is being made that Schutzhund dogs have to have good temperament, and the rules of the sport demand it. Once the temperament test is completed, the judge will direct you to the start of your track. The handler should approach the starting flag slowly and without applying any force upon his dog. Most new handlers are nervous and want to get going in a hurry. The rules state that you are to give your dog some time to absorb scent at the beginning of the track, so take your time. When the dog starts to move out, the handler is to wait at the scent pad until the dog is out at the end of the 10-meter or 33-foot line. To start before the dog has reached the end of the line is faulty. Notice how Ann feeds the line out with one hand and holds the other hand behind her to feel for the knot at the end of the line. By anticipating the end this way, she is able to step off the scent pad at the right moment without jerking her dog. Notice Ann's speed on this track. New handlers often allow their dogs to pull them down the track much too fast and then wonder why their dogs overshoot a corner. Your dog is only going to track as fast as you allow him to pull you. Now at the corner, watch how she keeps the line high so it doesn't tangle in the dog's leg. If a line does tangle, you should not untangle it until it reaches the next article. When the dog gets to an article, the rules state that it is supposed to convincingly point out the article. As we have said, this can be in the form of standing, sitting, or lying down. Nowhere in the rules does it state exactly how the dog should point out articles. Tom Rose gives a one-week seminar every month at his training facility in St. Louis. In it, he refers to generic rules. Generic rules are interpretations of a rule that are not in the rule book, but that no judge would fault. The generic rule for pointing out articles is for the dog to lie down on the track in the direction the track is being run with the article between his front feet, just as we just saw. No judge would fault a dog for this type of article indication, and that's what we recommend new handlers train their dogs to do. We'll mention other generic rules as we go through this video. Now, when the dog indicates the article, the rules state that the handler is to drop the leash and go directly to his dog. She should pick the article up and hold it over her head so the judge can see that it's been found. The rules also state that a handler can only praise his dog after an exercise, so you should not praise your dog at the articles. Just put it in your pocket, pick up the line, and the dog should remain in a down position until you give the command to track your dog again. The handler should deal with the line in the exact manner that she did at the start of the track. Feed it out with one hand, as we see here, with the other hand back, waiting for the end of the line. She should not step off until the dog has played out the entire line. Too often, we see new handlers start following their dog when there's 5 or 6 feet of line still behind them. This is faulty and could cost them points. The handler should deal with the last article just as he or she did with the first one. That is, drop the leash, go to the dog and lift the article overhead to show the judge. The handler and dog then report to the judge. The dog should be in the basic position, sitting by your side. Tell the judge your name, your dog's name, and that your Schutzhund I track is complete, and here are the articles. The generic rule of praise is, don't praise your dog until after reporting to the judge. Most judges will not fault you if you praise your dog at the last article, but the rule book states that you can only praise after the end of an exercise. If you find a judge that interprets tracking as being completed after reporting in with your articles, you could be faulted, so why take a chance? Once you have finished, the judge will give his critique. Some judges will do it right on the spot, while others will direct you back in front of the spectators and then give their critique there. The important thing to remember is that before the trial, you agreed to accept this man's judgment of your performance. The rules state that the judge's findings are final. There is no avenue of appeal. The rules also state that every contestant must conduct himself in a professional, sportsmanlike manner. While the great majority of contestants do conduct themselves in a professional manner, I have seen people argue with a judge. It's my personal opinion that Schutzhund judges should handle this situation like AKC judges do. That is, the first word of an argument results in expulsion from the competition. The second word results in long-term expulsion. Unfortunately, some new competitors have no AKC background and look at judges like umpires in a baseball game. The last part of our tracking session deals with a few ideas on what a handler can do if his dog loses the track. It's impossible to cover everything that could go wrong in a trial. Just about the time you think you've seen it all in dog training, something else comes along and blows your mind. The same thing applies to watching Schutzhund trials. In the tape, I will cover what we consider the most common problems. When we get into this area, we're usually talking about helping someone get a 70-point passing score and not a 100-point track. We will make a few assumptions for the video. Number one, we're going to assume that the handler can remember where he laid his track. And number two, that he has thought about the wind currents before the track and what problems these can cause. If you're honest with yourself and anticipate a problem ahead of time, you're going to be able to think more clearly when the problem actually appears. The first concern that most new competitors have is, will my dog get off the scent pad? If the dog tries to go in the wrong direction, you're better off to stand your ground, bring him back, and take a restart. If the dog is a weak starter, you may want to move with him after he has moved out a few feet. Often this adds confidence to the dog. You're going to lose points for both of these actions, but if the option is that the dog would fail the track or pass the track with a lower score if you do what needs to be done, it's not a hard decision to make. A point to remember is that you are only allowed 3 restarts over the entire track. When you give the 4th restart, you automatically fail your track. If the dog walks off the track once he's started, and you're sure that he's not picking up residual scent to either side, slow down and give more commands. Many times that's all that's needed to bring the dog back down on the track. If the dog overshoots a corner, don't panic. The rules state that the dog is allowed to overshoot the corner if the prevailing wind currents carry the scent past the corner. When a dog does have a problem at the corner, 80% of the time he's overshot the corner. If the handler stays at the end of the line and simply backs up a few steps, he pulls the dog back, which usually puts the dog back on the track. It's important not to reel in the line. You will lose points for this, so stay at the end of the line. Good handling on a backup looks like this. Most judges will allow a dog to continue to search as long as his nose is on the ground and he's still working. If the nose comes up, give a command. You need to get that nose back down on the ground or you're going to get whistled off your track. If the nose stays down, but he continues to circle and circle and circle, wait for him to pass over the track and then give your commands. If you have done this during your training, the dog is going to know that something is there when you say, find it. If the dog comes back to you, stay at the end of the line and give the find it command. Don't take up leash and don't bend over and point at the track. Both could be considered a restart. Remember, 4 restarts during the trial and you flunk. Often, handler actions tell the judge that a dog has just done something wrong. The judge may not have noticed what you saw, so don't telegraph your feelings. The following demonstration is an example of what we're talking about. Who knows, the judge may have been looking at his scorebook when this dog did his about turn. But in any event, the handler's actions certainly told the judge that something went wrong. With 10 to 12 entries in a full trial, tracking can easily take 2 to 3 hours. Schutzhund I dogs track first, so you will find yourself finished before the other competitors. It's always beneficial to watch the others track, but it's certainly not required. You can leave and go back to the club grounds or stadium. If you choose to leave, the important thing to remember is that other contestants are either tracking their dogs or getting ready to track. Slamming doors and racing off in cars is distracting. It's not something you want to hear when you're on the scent pad with your dog. Now, no one does this intentionally. It's just that they get caught up in the relief of having successfully completed their track, and they want to get on with the preparation for obedience and protection. But they forget that those behind them still have to cross the valley of death with their dogs. So, keep this in mind when you decide to leave the tracking grounds. The obedience phase starts after tracking in late morning. No matter what your tracking score is, you're expected to show up for obedience. The Schutzhund Obedience routine consists of 8 exercises that contain a total of 100 points. You must get at least 70 points to pass. The exercises are heeling on leash for 15 points, heeling off leash for 20 points, the sit exercise for 10 points, the down with recall for 10 points, the retrieve on the flat for 10 points, the retrieve over the 1 meter wall for 15 points, the send away and down for 10 points, and the long down under distraction for 10 points. Most experienced competitors will talk about a 9th exercise that receives no points but is as important as the others, and that is preparation for your obedience work. We'll cover this next. Just as in tracking, handlers need to reach a happy balance between preparing themselves and preparing their dogs before going out to compete. The key is not to overdo the work with your dog just to satisfy your nerves. If you're allowed on the obedience field, don't look at it as a chance to get out there and run all 8 exercises. This only tires your dog out. Rather, use the time constructively. Some dogs only need to be walked around the field on leash and maybe sent on 1 send away, while others need more. Maybe on the walk they need to go around all the blinds to see there's no helpers in them. They may need to be sent over the jump on leash and put in a down several places around the field. It's not a bad idea to make a list ahead of time of what you think your dog needs. Stick to this list. You're less likely to let your nerves get in the way if you follow it. The important thing is not to wear your dog out. Remember, you're not going to solve training problems just before walking on the field. The best way for a handler to calm himself is to get out on the field and work out the heeling pattern. Let the dog lie on the side of the field where it's cool. Some fields are very small, and you're going to have to give some thought as to how the pattern can fit the field. Doing this ahead of time keeps you busy and adds confidence to your routine. This may look easy from the sidelines, and some may consider it a waste of time, but you'll be surprised how much confidence this gives you later. When the time comes to report to the judge, you and another contestant will report at the same time. One will do the long down while the other does his obedience routine. When reporting, introduce yourself, your dog, and tell the judge that you're reporting for Schutzhund I Obedience. The judge will direct the handler to the point where he wants the dog to do the down. The procedure is that the handler will heel the dog to the correct spot, sit the dog, take the leash off, and either put it over the shoulder or in the pocket. Then down the dog and walk 40 paces away, remaining in the sight of the dog. The handler is to stand with his back to the dog and wait there until the other handler has finished all of the obedience routine up to the send away. The judge will then tell the handler that's doing the long down to go back to his dog. He should return and stand by the side of the dog, give the sit command, and once the dog is sitting, attach the leash and heel the dog to a location that is either indicated by the judge or a location that will not interfere with the send away of the other dog. Some of the more common mistakes that you see handlers make during this exercise are with the leash. They take it off or put it back on, as you see here, at the wrong time. The handler approaches, puts the leash on before telling the dog to sit. This is incorrect. Most judges will fault you for this. Another common error is to double command the dog by giving a stay command just before leaving the dog's side. You will see the handler go up, tell his dog to sit, take the leash off, tell the dog to down, and just before leaving the dog, he gives another stay command. This is a double command that will cost you points. Once the other handler has done his send away, it's your turn to go through the other 7 exercises. While you're waiting to start, you should make sure your dog is watching you. This command is something that's taught as an obedience exercise and tells the dog that he's about to work. Basically, it wakes him up and gets him ready to go. Your first obedience command is going to be heeling on leash. Most of the time, judges are going to let the Schutzhund I handlers choose their own heeling pattern. Here I've drawn 3 generic patterns. The one you choose would depend on the circumstances that you're faced with. Pattern 1 and 2 are for large fields. You would choose one over the other depending on where the group is, where the spectators are, and if you want to stay away from or close to the judge. The third pattern is designed for small fields, which are common during many normal Schutzhund competitions. The national events are always held on football fields, which are the easiest fields to show your dogs on. Sometimes new handlers get nervous about showing dogs on these larger fields, and that's a mistake because it's the little dinky fields that are hard to work out your heeling patterns on. The rule book is specific about certain elements of your heeling pattern. It's a little vague about other parts of the heeling pattern. So first we'll go through the specific elements and then give you some generic rules about the vague elements. First, the dog starts in the basic position with the leash in the left hand. In Schutzhund, every exercise begins and ends with the dog in the basic position, with the exception of heeling on leash, which does not end this way, but we'll discuss that in a minute. The second specific point in the rules is that the first leg is 40 to 50 paces straight away, followed by an about turn. The rule book is specific about saying that after 10 to 15 paces, you must do a fast and a slow, each being at least 10 paces. A voice command is allowed when the pace change takes place. And then finally, during the normal heeling, there must be a left turn, a right turn, and a left about turn. Now, the rule book is not specific about the distances between the fast and the slow, or the distances between the left, the right, and the about turns. Our generic rule is that the handler should put 10 paces between the fast and the slow heeling, 10 paces before the left turn, and 20 paces between the left, the right, and the about turn. No judge will fault you for these distances. Let's take a minute here and watch Tom Rose walk part of his heeling pattern. The specific thing I would like you to watch is the speed with which he's walking. The biggest mistake that new handlers make in heeling is to walk too slowly. Their dogs get bored and either lag or forge, but mostly lag. The rules don't discuss speed, but it's to your advantage to get out and really move quickly. This not only looks better to the judge, it forces your dog to stay with you. The dog is not going to get bored if he's working to keep up with the handler. Notice the voice commands at the change of pace. Those are allowed in Schutzhund. Tom is working a pattern here that's designed for a small field. The second biggest mistake people make is not to count their steps. They get lost in their pattern. Proper planning ahead of time should eliminate this. Here we are watching an actual Schutzhund trial in Germany where the handler was nervous and really hasn't got his pattern mastered. The overall picture is not as professional as Tom's heeling pattern. My feeling is that any new handler can learn to walk a pattern and look as good as Tom if he just takes the time to get out and practice. You need to do it again and again and again until it's smooth and it looks coordinated. That's what this heeling pattern is lacking. It doesn't look coordinated. Maybe a better word is choreographed. It doesn't look choreographed. Now, as we watch Tom again, the thing I would like you to look at is his arm movement, particularly the arm with the leash. Most Schutzhund judges want to see both arms swing. The rules state that the leash is to be held in the left hand and that it should hang loosely from the dog's neck. New handlers, or handlers that come from AKC, tend to lock their arms when they heel. Now as we watch our handler in a trial, notice his leash arm does not swing freely, and he's guided his dog around the corner with the leash. That would be considered faulty by many judges. The last point to cover on our heeling pattern is the left about turn. This will be something new to AKC trainers. To perform it smoothly without losing your dog, you need to practice your footwork. First we will watch Tom do it again, and then we will analyze his footwork. Tom makes this look pretty easy, but there's a specific pattern to this turn. When you reach the point that you're going to make your turn, plant the left foot and then place the right foot near the toe of the left at a 45-degree angle into the turn. As you do this, pass the leash around your back. The second step is to pivot the left foot directly off the heel of the right foot, facing it in the direction that you're about to walk. The third step is to step off on the right foot in the direction you're going to heel. Now let's watch Tom do this one more time. Notice how smoothly it looked. This is something that is better practiced without the dog in the beginning. Good footwork in your about turns is critical in making your heeling pattern look smooth. Many new handlers have poor footwork on their about turns. They don't keep the turn tight, and this results in the handler getting way ahead of his dog as he steps off. Let's watch my friend in Germany try this one more time, and you'll see what a poor turn looks like and how it can affect your dog. After the on-leash heeling pattern, the handler must heel his dog through a group of at least 4 people. The handler must go through the group 2 times and halt in the middle of the group on one of the 2 trips through. New handlers often get confused by what is expected from them as a pattern through the group. To a certain extent, I would have to agree with this concern because of the interpretation of the rules. It can really vary here, not only from organization to organization, but from judge to judge. The pattern the USA groups walk is different than the DVG groups. USA and the SV groups just mingle around, while the DVG groups walk a specific pattern. We will cover both in this tape. If you read the rule book, it's not specific about adding a halt before entering the group. The SV and USA want the handler to halt and wait for the judge to motion them into the group. The DVG does not require this halt, but to be on the safe side, you should put one in. You will not be faulted for adding additional turns or a halt. The only risk you run is that you are being judged for your entire performance, and if your dog makes a mistake, you'll be faulted for it. In USA or the SV, the handler enters the group and basically does an AKC figure 8 with a halt in the middle of the figure 8. When Tom leaves the group, he'll begin his off-leash heeling. He'll take the leash off and either put it over his shoulder with the snap on the right side away from the dog, or he'll put it in his pocket. He will now re-enter the group and repeat the group heeling pattern he just walked on leash, doing the figure 8 with one halt in the middle. He will then proceed downfield out of the group. Once he's clear of the group, he'll put in one halt and then go on and do his off-leash heeling pattern. That's the same pattern as the on-leash pattern. The DVG has tried to standardize the pattern of movement of the group. It looks like this. The handler makes 2 straight passes through the center of the group with a halt in the middle on one of these passes. In the DVG, after leaving the group the second time on leash, the handler used to be required to stop and then proceed on and take the leash off while heeling. At the DVG Nationals this year, the head judge of the DVG said that this halt was no longer necessary. The rule book used to require this halt 10 years ago, but no longer does. The SV and the USA does not require it. We recommend that you ask your DVG judge ahead of time if you have a question. It's important that you keep abreast of the current rulings. Over the 15 years that I've been involved in Schutzhund, rules have changed several times. The interpretation of rules may change again between the time of this production and when you watch it. There are several pitfalls or traps that new handlers should be aware of when heeling through the group. First, they should plan their pattern so they don't exit the group and find themselves working up next to or into the crowd. By exiting towards an open field, you allow yourself plenty of room just in case you have problems getting the leash off and put away. This situation can be solved ahead of time with a little forethought and working the pattern out without the dog. New handlers must be careful about when to take the leash off and where they put it when it does come off. Here we see Tom taking the leash off as he does his about turn. Some judges could fault this procedure and consider it a help with their dog. The rules are not specific about asking for a sharp about turn here. So if you have a dog that's going to lag, make it a rounded turn and keep the dog to the inside of the turn, not to the outside. If you have him on the outside, he can walk away from you. If you have him on the inside, you can turn into the dog and keep him with you. When you take the leash off during this procedure, you will be faulted if you hang the leash with the snap on your left side next to the dog's head. So, either put it in your pocket or over your shoulder with the snap opposite the head of the dog. After the halt outside the group, the handler goes through his off-leash heeling pattern, which is identical to the on-leash pattern. As the dog heels away from the group, it will be exposed to 2 gunshots. The rules say the gun is to be 15 yards from the dog and the shots are to be fired 10 seconds apart. If the dog leaves the handler, he'll be excused from the trial immediately. If there is any question in the judge's mind, he will retest the dog to gunfire. Schutzhund judges are usually very strict about making sure that a dog is not gun-shy. They want to see total indifference to gunfire. The end of the off-leash heeling does not take place until after the handler comes to a halt and the dog is in the basic position. Remember, all exercises in Schutzhund begin and end with the dog sitting in the basic position. The only exception to this rule is the end of the on-leash heeling, beginning of the off-leash heeling patterns. The next exercise is the sit out of motion. This exercise begins with the dog in the basic position by your side. Once the judge has given his okay, the handler heels his dog 10 paces and gives the sit command without any change of pace or additional help to his dog. The handler continues on a straight line for 30 more paces. He then stops, turns around, and waits for the judge to direct him back to his dog, as we see here. When the handler returns to his dog, he is to assume the basic position on the right side of the dog. Our generic rule is to wait 3 seconds after you return to finish the exercise. Then the handler moves back to the end of the field so he can then begin the next exercise, which is the down with recall. The biggest problem new handlers have with the sit exercise is with body language when they give the sit command. It looks like this. You can see right here that the judge is faulting this handler for the body language that he used when he gave the sit command. Now, most times in a small trial on a Schutzhund I, the judge is not going to deduct points for the type of body language we just saw. But let's look at another handler, which is a different case. Even if this dog had not laid down, this handler would have been faulted for the amount of body language that he used when he gave the sit command. He actually looked back at the dog. At this point, the handler does not know that his dog is laid down, which allows us to talk about showing some class when your dog makes a mistake. We feel the handler should show absolutely no emotion when he turns and sees his dog. This looks much more professional than to shake your head and act disappointed, or worse yet, get disgusted. It's our feeling that handlers that get mad at their dogs in a trial should step back and look at themselves and think about what kind of a picture this creates of themselves to the judge and the spectators at a trial. The next exercise is the down with recall. Normally, the handler will heel his dog back to the place where he started the sit out of motion exercise. The down with recall begins and ends from the basic position. The handler heels his dog 10 paces and gives the down command without any additional help. The handler then continues on 30 paces in a straight line, halts, and turns around and waits for the judge. When requested by the judge, he calls his dog to him. The dog is to come quickly, sit close in front, and when the handler gives the heel command, the dog is to move quickly into the basic position. From that point, you get ready for the next exercise, which is the retrieve on the flat. Take your dog with you when you go to pick up the dumbbell and get ready for the exercise. The biggest mistakes that handlers make with this exercise are body language at the down command, body language at the recall, and getting flustered if they turn around and see the dog sitting or standing. You do not lose all the points if your dog has stayed in one place, so don't think that you've just blown the whole exercise. Again, keep your emotions to yourself. Remember that everyone is looking at your face when you turn and see your dog. If you show emotion and get upset, you stress your dog. If your dog comes in slow on a recall, bite your tongue and finish the exercise and praise your dog. Remember, your dog is not doing this to spite you. He's only reacting to previous training. Now, let's take a look at a handler in a real trial that would be faulted for giving his dog help at the down command and when he tells his dog to move into the heel position. If you watched closely, you saw the handler dip his left shoulder and swing his left arm down over the back of the dog. Most judges would consider that a fault or a help to your dog to down. When the handler called his dog or commanded his dog into the heel position, swinging the left shoulder back and picking up the left arm would also be faulty. Once again, Tom will demonstrate the correct way to call your dog into the heel position. Absolutely no help to the dog other than the command. The next exercise is the retrieve on the flat. Starting from the basic position, the handler tosses a personal article. This can either be a small dumbbell or a glove. It must go at least 8 paces. With the command bring, the dog must move quickly to the article, pick it up, and return quickly to the sitting position in front of the handler. After a brief pause, the handler is to command the dog to release the article. Then, placing the article in a neutral position by your side, the handler gives the heel command. The dog is to move quickly into the basic position by the side. Our generic rule is to wait 1 to 2 seconds in between each of these movements, taking the article, putting it by your side, and commanding the dog to move into the position of heel. Notice how Tom has placed himself on the field so that he's ready to move directly into the next exercise, which is retrieve over the jump. Handlers need to give some thought to where they will stand, in what direction they will throw the article, and what they throw it near. We see handlers throw the article near jumps or near dogs in the long down or towards the blind. The dog doing the retrieve then either jumps or checks out the blind or the dog that's lying down. Notice how Tom stood in a position that was several paces from where he would have to move to the next exercise, and he threw the article downfield away from any of these other obstacles. When the dog retrieved it, he just had to turn around and he was right in position for the very next exercise. If you have a dog that's very energetic and likes to retrieve, it may need a longer throw. The rule book says a minimum of 8 paces. It says nothing about how far you can throw the article. Dogs normally always turn the same way. In other words, to the left or the right. It's like being left or right-handed. If your dog turns to the right and you end up getting crooked sits in training, and they're always to the right, throw the article in a trial a little to the left so that when he turns and comes in, he's coming straight in. This requires some practice throwing. You'll find that throwing an article is like throwing horseshoes. After a while, you get very accurate at it. Pick your spot to aim at before the trial starts. As a handler, you don't need to wait for the judge to tell you to take the dumbbell. As I said, our generic rule is to pause 1 to 2 seconds before each movement. But if the dog is returning and looks like he's going to drop the article, grab it quickly. If the dog doesn't pick up the article, some handlers like to take a few steps towards the dog, hoping this will cause them to pick it up. The handler that moves from the basic position will lose all the points for the exercise. So plant your feet in concrete and don't move once you've tossed that article. And finally, be aware of body language, especially when commanding your dog into the heel position. Let's take a look at my friend from Germany and see what happens on the retrieve on the flat. He almost dropped the dumbbell here. He waited too long to take it. When you see the dog sit and mouthing the dumbbell and looking around, get the dumbbell out of his mouth as quickly as possible. The next exercise is the retrieve over the 1 meter wall. Again, from the basic position, the handler tosses a dumbbell or a personal article over the jump. When commanded, the dog jumps the wall without touching it. Before reaching the article, the handler gives the bring command. The dog is to go quickly to the article, pick it up, and return jump the wall, again without touching it. It is to come quickly to a sit position in front of the handler. After a brief pause, the handler gives the release command. He then takes the article, and once it's in a neutral position, he commands the dog to the basic heel position. The exercise is finished when the dog is in the basic position. There are a number of places that a handler can make errors with this exercise. Many people feel that once the dog has not jumped, it's blown the entire exercise, so they move to the jump to help their dog back. Moving from the basic position will result in a major point deduction for the exercise. If they just stayed where they were and the dog had done part of the exercise, they would have received partial points. Dogs can get partial points for jumping in both directions but not retrieving the article. Or, if they had only jumped one way and retrieved the article, they also get partial points. New handlers need to be aware of the fact that judges will allow you to rethrow an article if it bounces to the side of the jump, which could cause the dog to go around the jump, or if it bounces back towards the jump. The procedure to follow here is to ask the judge if you can rethrow. If he says yes, some judges will go and get the article and bring it to you. The important thing is not to move from the basic position without asking the judge if you can do so first. If the judge does not move to pick it up, ask if you can go and get it. If a dog's return jump is slow to come in, handlers have a tendency to take a couple of steps backwards, just as they did in training, to encourage the dog to speed it up a little. This falls under the category of moving from the basic position and will result in a major point loss. A point I would like to make in our video is that the jumps we're using in the video are wooden jumps. In a trial, you're going to see brush jumps. You should train your dog using brush jumps because some dogs can have a problem if they've never seen a brush jump before. The last exercise is the send away and down. Before you can do this exercise, you must wait for the other handler to pick up his dog from the long down and get back out of the way. So wait for the judge to give you the signal to send your dog. The rule book says that from the basic position, the handler proceeds forward a few paces. Our generic rule of a few paces is more than 1 and less than 10. The reason for this is that when the rule book wants you to go 10 paces, it tells you exactly 10 paces. The handler is to give the send away command and stop moving at the same time. The dog should run 25 paces straight away, and the handler will give the down command. The dog should down immediately. At the request of the judge, the handler will go to his dog's right side, give the sit command, and finish this exercise. Once you get to your dog, the procedure is to stand on the right side of your dog, give the sit command, attach the leash to the dog, and heel him back to the judge. Now, if you had not done your long down, you would take your dog directly from this point over to where the judge wants you to do the long down. If you have already done your long down, you will go back to the judge and receive your critique for the obedience routine along with the other handler that was doing his routine with you. When you report back to the judge, give your name, your dog's name, and tell the judge that your Schutzhund I Obedience routine is complete. One of the common mistakes we see handlers make is to take several more steps after giving the send away command. Kind of like they want to get moving out there with their dog. This is faulty and will cost points. It looks like this. This change of pace at the send away would also be considered faulty. If the dog is going out slowly, let him continue to go. But once he stops, down him. It's too easy for for him to stop and then wonder what's going on and curl off to one side or another, or worse yet, come back to you, or leave the field. Let's take a look here at my friend in Germany. If he would have downed his dog here, he would have got partial points. As it is, he gives a second command and loses points, and then his dog leaves the field. He still has not given the down command. When a dog leaves the field, you have 3 chances to call him back. If the dog does not return after the 3rd try, he will fail the Schutzhund exam. Although Tom does not raise his arm on the send-away, it is allowed in the rules. It's important to either lower your arm immediately or wait until the dog is in down position. Both methods are allowed. If the handler lowers his arm as the dog downs, it would be considered a double fault and points would be taken off. Some dogs get confused when they look back and see the arm up. They think that they should keep going. The rules state that the dog is to down at least 8 paces before the edge of the field, so the dog that runs to the fence is also going to be faulted. When picking up your dog, there's nothing in the rule book that says that you have to be lined up and down with the field. If your dog is lying crosswise on the field, line up on the right side of the dog so that when you give the sit command, the dog pops up, he ends up in a straight sit. If your dog did not go a long way, there was no reason to take big steps when you walk out to pick up the dog. The judge is not going to be fooled by using 25 little baby steps, but you should be able to squeeze in several more steps if you shorten your stride just a little bit. The next section of our video concerns the Schutzhund I Protection routine. The protection work normally begins after a lunch break on the day of the trial, and although there is nothing in the rules about the order of competition, you will usually see the Schutzhund I dogs do their bite work first. A perfect score in Schutzhund is 300 points, with 100 points allocated for tracking, 100 points allocated to obedience, and 100 points for protection. To pass, the competitors must score a minimum of 70 points in tracking, 70 points in obedience, and 80 points in protection. The feeling is that the dogs should be better trained and have more control in bite work than in the other 2 phases of training. Because it doesn't take very long, let's watch an entire protection routine, and then we'll dissect it from the handler's point of view.
Yeah! Be there!
It does.
He's making first step, Robert.
Preparing your dog before walking on the protection field is almost more important in the protection routine than it is for tracking or obedience. The major reason is that your dog has already been out on the obedience field that day, and unless he's stimulated, there's a possibility that when you walk out for bite work, that dog is going to think he's in for another obedience routine. Of course, if he's watched the previous competitor, he knows better. But what if you're the first dog? Or what about the dog that's been kept back and only heard barking? He's heard barking in training and then gone out and done more obedience. So let's talk about preparing your dog for bite work. Good preparation for bite work begins with a long walk to make sure that your dog has totally relieved himself. To lose points for a dog that urinates on the field is such a waste after you have worked so hard for so many months. Knowing your dog and being honest with yourself will produce the best results on what to do before bite work. We cannot tell you in this video that every dog needs a bite before going on the field. This is going to vary from dog to dog, depending on the training, the temperament, and the drive of each dog. Some dogs do better if they are stimulated by the helper but never actually get a bite. So when they walk on the field, they're looking for that helper. These dogs would actually go down in drive after they get a bite. It's like they have a full load of steam by being stimulated, and every bite lets a little out. Other dogs are so loaded that they need a bite with an out, just to remind them that you're still the boss, even at a trial. Some dogs have a lot of energy and just need to chase a ball or do something to get tired out, so that it slows them down enough to make them think. A bite and an out for these dogs would just fire them up too much. So, we come back to knowing your dog. If you're not sure what to do, test the different ideas at different training sessions before the day of the trial. Keep notes and settle on what's best for your dog. Reporting to the judge is done in the same manner as tracking and obedience. It's done on leash. Introduce yourself, your dog, and tell the judge you're reporting for Schutzhund I Protection. You will find that the judge gives a lot more direction in protection work than he did in tracking and obedience. For example, the judge will tell you where to send your dog from. He will tell you when to send your dog. He will tell you when to come and pick it up. He will tell you to wait in the blind and when it's okay to come out. He will tell you when to take the leash off. He will tell you when to out your dog if your dog is not coming off quickly enough. He will tell you when to go and pick up your dog. He will tell you when to send your dog on the courage test. He will tell you when to out the dog again if it's not coming out quickly enough. And finally, he will tell you when to go to your dog when it's at the helper at the courage test. In regard to the out, If the handler waits for the judge to tell him to out his dog, he will be faulted for a slow out. After the helper stops the fight, count to 3 and out your dog. So, let's begin. When you move to the spot that's indicated by the judge, you do it on leash. When you get there, take the leash off, put it in your pocket or over your shoulder. It's okay to hold the dog by the collar. When the judge directs you to do so, send the dog to the blind. The handler is not to move to the blind until the judge directs you to come in. So, don't watch the dog here, watch the judge. When you go to your dog, walk right up to him and grab the collar. It's not necessary to walk to a point near the blind and then have the judge motion you in to get your dog. New handlers often make this mistake. When the helper steps out and runs to the second blind, the handler and dog get into the blind the helper was just standing in. From the handler's standpoint, you do not want your dog to see where the helper just ran to. You are to stay in this blind until the judge motions you out. While waiting, put the leash on so that when you leave the blind, you're heeling your dog on leash. Follow the direction of the judge. They will normally walk with you and tell you when to remove the leash. Most judges will allow a heel command as the leash comes off. The dog is to remain heeling. When the helper attacks out of the blind, the dog is to go in and bite. The handler is allowed to verbally praise the dog at this point. He is no longer allowed to give an attack command. The handler should remain where he's standing as the dog does the bite work. When the helper stops, wait for a split second and out your dog. After the dog outs, wait for the judge to tell you to go to pick up your dog.
When you go to the dog, walk up next to the dog, give the dog a sit command, and tell the helper to step back. At that point, you can put your leash on the dog and heel the dog over to the blind. The helper will now walk downfield with the judge and prepare himself for the courage test. The judge will tell you when to move out of the blind and when to move to the center of the field. You do this on leash. When you get to the center of the field, sit your dog and take the leash off him. You are allowed to grab the dog by the collar. When the helper moves to the center of the field, you can give the helper commands to, hey, you, stop. And you can give your dog the command to bite. The handler should remain in the spot where he's been standing after he sends the dog. Approximately 1 second after the handler or the helper stops fighting, the handler gives the out command. When the dog outs, the judge would tell him to approach his dog.
There is a difference between a disarm and a search. A disarm is simply taking the stick from the helper. A search consists of patting the helper down, simulating looking for weapons. The rule book only asks for a disarm, but most USA judges interpret this to mean a search and disarm. The word is that DVG is soon to follow. We'll show both methods here. If you have a question before a trial, ask the judge or trial secretary if what you plan on doing is okay. Probably the simplest method is for the handler to walk into the heel position, tell the helper to step back slowly and raise his arms. Down or sit the dog, then walk around and perform a search. Some people will disarm at that time. Go back into the heel position, tell the dog to sit, attach the leash, heel your dog around the back of the helper. If you've not done your disarm, do it then, and escort the helper back to the judge.
It's very important that you give your dog a sit command and that he does sit before you move out into the escort to the judge.
Sometimes in Schutzhund I you will see handlers come into the heel position, tell the helper to step back, command the dog to sit, attach the leash, heel the dog behind the helper and perform a disarm while in motion, and then escort the helper back to the judge. Some judges will allow this. Others may fault you for no search. If you have a dog that you're concerned about leaving in a down position while you walk around the back of the helper, you may decide to gamble a handler fault versus a dog that rebites. If the DVG changes their interpretation of the rules, the following disarms may soon be faulty because they don't include a search. We will include them in this video because some judges may still allow them. The first is for the handler to walk into the heel position, reach over and take the stick, tell the helper to step back, command the dog to sit, attach the leash, heel the dog around the back of the helper, and escort the helper and the dog back to the judge.
We do not recommend this form of a disarm. Notice the handler did not sit the dog before starting the escort. That's a mistake.
Another method you may see is for the handler to come into the heel position, tell the helper to step back, put the leash on, and tell the helper to turn around. As the handler heels past the helper, he takes the stick while in motion and then escorts the helper back to the judge.
This is not the correct way to disarm and search the helper. This will cost you points on your Schutzhund I.
Another rendition of this would be for the handler to come into the heel position and tell the helper to step back. Tell his dog to sit and put the leash on and then heel him around the back of the helper, and as he started the escort, he would disarm the helper while he's in motion.
Again, this will be faulted by all judges.
Notice in all of these disarms there are certain points that are consistently done in the same order. They are that the handler walks into the heel position and does not give a command to the dog until after the disarm or until after commanding the helper to step back. Number 2, the leash is not put on until after the dog is in the sitting position. To put the leash on while the dog is lying down would be considered faulty by most judges. In every variation, the handler takes the stick from the helper. And in every variation, the escort involves the handler escorting the helper with the dog in between him and the helper. Most of the problems in bite work are dog problems and not people problems. When something happens, many times there's very little the handler can do to salvage the situation. In fact, you'll find there are situations that come up that nothing you do will save the day for your Schutzhund title. In this section on problems in protection work, we'll try and cover some of the small things handlers can do to salvage as many points as possible. Handlers must understand that in Schutzhund, when the dog bites, it must out on its own. If the handler cannot verbally out the dog and he has to physically take the dog off the bite, he fails protection and therefore fails the trial. How close you're allowed to get to the dog varies from organization to organization and judge to judge, but it looks like this. We sometimes see handlers make mistakes in picking their dogs up at the bark in the blind and after the attack on the handler. When the judge tells you to go to your dog in these two exercises, it means that he's giving you the okay to move in and grab the dog's collar and take control. If necessary, it's okay to physically block the dog from the helper with your body. New handlers often misunderstand and think that they should pause when they get close to the dog and wait to be motioned in from the judge. This delay can cause rebites or dogs that try and avoid being grabbed. Let's look at the correct way to do it first, and then we'll look at a mistake. In our next sequence, Tom is going to demonstrate two things: how handlers watch their dogs and not the judges and miss the command to be moving in to grab the dog, and how they go close to the dog and don't grab them quickly enough. As soon as you give the out command, your attention should turn immediately to the judge to watch for the motion to send you into your dog. Then go directly to the dog. Don't hesitate like this. It's too easy for the dog to move away from you or re-bump and bite. This time, Tom will do it again and concentrate on outing the dog and then transferring his attention directly to the judge and waiting for the motion to go to the dog. Another area where handlers can save points is when the judge tells them to go to their dog after the courage test. We sometimes see new handlers walk slowly downfield. That's a mistake. Handlers cannot run downfield, but they can walk quickly. How you approach the dog the last few meters will depend on the temperament and the training of your dog. If there's a possibility of the dog coming back to you, you'd want to get to him as quickly as possible. Some dogs get excited when the handlers approach and either want to rebite or jump away because they're concerned about being grabbed. Handlers would not want to charge up to these type dogs, so they would walk quickly downfield and then slow down during the last several meters. The flip side of the coin on this argument is that if you have an extremely well-trained dog, like this dog, walking slowly shows the dog off. But keep in mind, one little mistake and you've shot yourself in the foot. In Schutzhund, every exercise begins and ends with the dog in the basic heel position. We sometimes see handlers put the leash on while the dog is still in the down position at the end of the bite work. Most judges will fault this. So remember to follow the same procedure at the end of the send away, the long down, and now the protection work. Walk into the heel position, tell your dog to sit, then put the leash on. While we wait for Melissa to reach her dog and demonstrate this leash problem, let's talk about another common mistake new handlers make throughout bite work. Simply put, they talk to their dogs too much. While a little encouragement is allowed, too much could be faulty. Usually it's just a case of nerves, so if you fall in this category, be aware of it and try and control what you say throughout your bite work. So in this case, Melissa demonstrated for us how handlers will go up and put the leash on in the down position and then not sit their dog before they do the escort to the judge. Because many new Schutzhund competitors come from the ranks of the AKC, I want to take a minute here before ending the video and address some of the differences in obedience rules between these two sports. In the AKC, you're allowed to use the dog's name when giving a command, as in, Cito, here. Schutzhund does not allow this. You would only use one command. To include the name would be judged a double command. In Schutzhund heeling, the about turns are left about turns. The AKC about turns are right about turns. Dogs can learn both types and compete in both sports. In AKC, you're not allowed to swing your arms while you walk. In Schutzhund heeling, the handler will be faulted for not swinging both arms enough. In AKC, there are no handler commands allowed during heeling other than the initial heel command. In Schutzhund, a command is allowed at the change of pace. In other words, from normal to fast or from fast to normal, the handler can give another heel command. In AKC, hand signals or voice signals are allowed. In Schutzhund, there are no hand signals allowed other than raising the arm in the send-away, which can also be included with a voice signal. In AKC, when you leave your dog in the long down, you are allowed to give a stay command. In Schutzhund, you are not. In AKC, the judge directs you when to make your turns and when to make your change of paces. In Schutzhund, this is not required. You are allowed to make up your own pattern as you go as long as it contains all of the essentials that the judge wants to see from the rules. The judge also will not tell you when to do your change of paces. The AKC obedience is generally more demanding than Schutzhund obedience. For that reason, it's excellent practice for Schutzhund competitors. It forces you to be more precise in your training and is an excellent place to practice working under stress. This has been a hard video to produce. I very much wanted to follow the rule book without making the mistake of getting involved in controversial rule interpretations. Because of the leeway given to judges on the interpretation of rules, the decision was made not to try and go into detail on point deductions for exercises or mistakes. After doing this video, judges have my deepest admiration. At the best, they have a difficult job to do. They don't get enough credit for the complexity of their task or the time their judges' assignments take them away from their families or personal lives. Too often people admire judges because of their position, when in fact, I think they should be admired for their dedication to the sport and the personal sacrifices they make for others. In this video, I tried to follow a direction that most judges would agree with. If I erred along the way, it was my error and not that of any of the people that helped me with this tape. There are a number of people that I would like to thank for their help in this production. Tom and Holly Rose volunteered their facility, their knowledge, their dogs, and their time in the production of this video. Without their help, this tape would not have happened. I would like to thank Joe Tackett, the head judge for Schutzhund USA. Joe patiently answered my phone calls and repetitive questions concerning the do's and don'ts of what to put in and take out of this tape. The video would not have been as good as it is if it had not have been for his input. And finally, I would also like to thank the members of the Spirit of St. Louis Schutzhund Club, otherwise known as the Spirit of St. Louis Schutzhund and Dining Club, for their help in producing this video. You won't find a nicer group of people in the Schutzhund sport anywhere in the world. Tom and Holly Rose live in St. Louis and have been highly involved in the sport of Schutzhund since the early 1970s. They run a large professional boarding facility and training center. Tom offers normal obedience classes to local residents, along with taking in a limited number of private dogs from people all over the United States for personalized Schutzhund training. If you have an interest in learning more about the sport of Schutzhund, 8 or 9 times a year, Tom and Holly offer a one-week workshop on all aspects of the sport. They limit the number of people in each class so that those attending get a great deal of personalized attention. These workshops last 5 days. There is classroom instruction followed by actual work with the dogs, which is videoed and then analyzed later in the class. Tom and Holly's workshops have become a popular event in the Schutzhund community. If you love this sport, or if you're just starting in the sport, I strongly recommend you take your next vacation in St. Louis. I do 2 to 3 mailings each year of our video catalog. If you're watching this tape and would like to be kept informed of our new releases, you may want to drop us a note or call.